Okay, let's call ourselves to order. Meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen. It is 7:06, November 2nd. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by remote participation. It is a Zoom meeting. The meeting ID is 913-4843-3773, and the passcode is 593200. And the dial-in phone number for the Zoom meeting is area code 646-558-8656. We are still looking for volunteers for some town boards and committees. Among them, the Finance Committee is looking for a member, an associate member for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and others that if you also look on the town website. Reminder to subscribe for email town news and announcements at www.newbury.org/subscribe. And without further ado, our first.
Archie, could I just say a few things under announcements?
Absolutely.
One, I wanted to thank everybody. Seems like we had a seamless Halloween. We're all kind of nervous how that went, and thank the fire department and the police department for all what they did, delivering to families and kids yesterday. On Saturday. That was a terrific idea and it went over well. And want to thank everybody that's been involved with this early voting, especially Mike McCarron and his office. It's just been overwhelming. We've had, as of today, 2,200 votes, absentee, mail-in, early voting that's gone on in West Newbury, out of like 3,600 registered voters. So it's a monumental task, and I just wanted to thank everybody that was involved with that, because I know it was a little bit overwhelming. That's it.
Thanks, Glenn. And those are great comments. Our first order of business is request for appointment. We have two candidates who are looking to be on the associate member of the planning board. And let's just take them as they are here. We have Kim Monahan Borgioli. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Do we know if Kim is on the line?
There's two phone lines that aren't identified, but
I'm Moto today, so the Moto one is me.
Kim may not be on. She, I know was planning to be on, but I don't see her, and she's not speaking.
I think the 603 number might be Paul Savigny. Paul, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Great.
Okay, in that case, let's maybe she'll come in a minute. Let's Jake Cormier, just you're on. We can see. Make sure you're unmuted, and just tell us a very brief little bio about you and any questions you might have for in regards to the position.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jake Cormier. My wife and I moved to West Newbury 5 years ago. We purchased the old Walker Farm on 111 Indian Hill. So we did some extensive renovation, making the foundational upgrades for the future while kind of keeping the aesthetic value. Worked with several members of the town during that construction project. My wife and I fell in love with the community. We now have 7 goats, a couple pigs, chickens. So we definitely love the rural fabric that West Newbury is. I grew up in a small town in North Central Mass, background in construction. I actually worked for a design build firm on the other side, doing site construction, site engineering, and meeting with towns and boards to get approvals for small commercial projects, cul-de-sacs, and 40B projects. Past 10 years, I've been working with Liberty Mutual Insurance as part of their strategy team, product and the claims office. Really focus on operation efficiency, customer service, and developing employee experience. Been able to work a little bit overseas during that project as well. But overall, just love West Newbury. Want to be involved with the community, help shape for the future, learn from the current board members, while gaining that experience to hopefully make a difference in the future of West Newbury in some fashion. So no real questions for you all directly on the position. I met with the board and really have an understanding what it is, but open to any questions you may have.
Rick or Glenn?
I guess you've already, you talked with the planning board, so you understand what their schedule is like, and a meeting twice a month, Tuesday nights, of indeterminate length. Sorry, right?
Yeah.
Is something that works for you?
Yeah. I wanted to wait for the right time. I was looking earlier, before I had my first child, and I was an adjunct teacher over at UMass Lowell. So I've stopped doing that, moved close, started, with the remote work and everything like that, working from home all the time. So I have a lot of extra time on my hand. You don't even have to warm the car to get to these meetings right now. But even when we do go back to normal, like I said, I definitely am committed. Know I can only handle so much things, and my portfolio right now is in a good place where the house is done. We're living here, and this is kind of my next experience that I want to grow and learn, and like I said, be part of. So definitely on board for the commitment. And for the past 2 or 3 meetings I've been attending, just to kind of go through the routine, understand what it is, what's involved. So I've already kind of set my schedule to that already.
Do you rent those goats out for like goat yoga?
We do not. I don't think you want to have one of these goats doing yoga with you. They're pretty big, and they got some big horns. So
obviously you haven't seen me.
That's fair.
I go, yeah. I honestly don't have any questions. Your resume speaks well. I'm glad to hear that you had gone to a couple of meetings, just so you could understand. It's easier to talk to people about what goes on. But I'm glad that you went to a couple. It seems like you have some good knowledge from your previous jobs to be able to give to the board also. So I like it, and I like people that have moved in get committed to volunteering for the town. I appreciate that, and I want to thank you for that.
It's great. Like I said, great town, great community.
Yeah, that's great, Jake. That's great. There's a good learning curve. There's a lot to learn on the planning board. I was on it for a few years, quite a few years back, and but it's actually it's intellectually stimulating and interesting. That's great.
Okay, is the other Kim on board?
I see.
Yes, I just joined. I was having an issue.
No problem.
Hi, Kim. Do you want to give us just a little brief bio and what you know about the position and any questions you might have?
Okay. I previously served as an associate planning board member back a couple of years ago, and due to work constraints traveling back and forth to New York, I stepped down at the end of my term. Now I've changed jobs, and now with COVID, not going anyplace. So I am a senior credit officer for a local financial institution, with my background primarily being in commercial real estate, finance and development. I've worked for some local banks, some national banks. I've done private equity and distressed debt. But more in the last 5 or 6 years, mostly on the credit side and structuring transactions. So I have a vast knowledge of different real estate development projects and financing.
Rick asked the same questions of Jake. Is the time scheduling and so forth, the meeting times and the, are you going to be, the availability is going to be okay for you?
Yes, it is. I'm not traveling back and forth to New York anymore. I'm based in a Massachusetts bank now.
So I should probably interject at this point that Kim and I had a good phone conversation earlier today. And I asked Kim if she would be interested in the ZBA position. We're in a unique situation here where we have, for the, speaking of the planning board associate position, where we normally die to have one good candidate. And we have two really good sounding people that are interested in the position. Kim obviously already with some experience, but Kim and I spoke earlier today, and I asked her if she'd be interested in the full position on the ZBA, the voting position on the ZBA. Understanding that she had some limited experience working within the 40B realm, I guess several years back. And I think Kim is interested. I know you had to get some feedback, and that's not on the agenda tonight. So we actually technically can't vote on that tonight, but I just thought it was important to get that out there early before we got too deep into the conversation and found ourselves in a dilemma where we had to choose between two great candidates.
Just a minor correction, Rick, the ZBA position is also an associate.
Oh, it is? Okay, I thought it was a full position on the ZBA.
It was a full position, but then the person who was serving as an associate agreed to take the full position. So that left
Okay.
as the associate position.
Okay.
Does that change anything?
Nope.
For me, no.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and I apologize for the error there.
No worries.
So I guess as Rick said, we're in a unusual position of having two good candidates for one opening, and I guess we would the board would be curious, Kim, if what Rick says is what you're thinking on, is that something that you'd be, something you're interested in, is maybe the ZBA to do something different, or you're more thinking back, staying with the planning board application? What's your...
I think the ZBA would be a great option. I do, the 40B project is very intriguing to me, and I think it has a big impact on the town and why most people live here. And I definitely think it would be something, it would be great to be part of a project like that. I do have some limited knowledge of 40B. It's been a few years since I've worked on a 40B project, but I don't believe the state statutes have changed that much over the last 10 years or so on this. The general principles, I believe, are still the same.
Do you know, hi, this is Glenn Kemper. Kim, do you know where the development's going to be, a potential development? I just want to make sure you're not in a butter. Because
I live on Crane Neck. I'm not in a butter.
Okay. I just didn't want to give your address out there, but that's if you feel comfortable about that, good, because it's blacked out on your on your resume for us.
Oh no, I'm on Crane Neck. But I do know where it is.
Yep. No. I was just trying to get around get around you giving your address, but if you, okay, fine. That was my only question. So I would actually make a motion that Jake Cormier make a motion that he would be the associate member of the planning board. And then after that motion is seconded and then voted on, I'm gonna ask that we, our next agenda, put the appointment of Kim on for the associate member of the ZBA. And you wouldn't have to come again. You know, you could, it's a meeting, but you wouldn't have to Zoom in again with us.
So
Okay, no, that's totally fine. I just have to wait for my CEO to confirm that it's fine with him.
I understand.
But I don't expect, I talked to the head of HR and he didn't have any issues. So I just
It's
needed
true,
to send a final email.
It's 2 weeks away, so if you could just make a kind of the same application, just so we could have that on file by next,
Mhm.
next a week and a half from now, by Wednesday would probably be best, so we could get it into our packet. Because we don't have a meeting
Who
until.
do I send it to? I sent it to Leah the last time. Should I still send it to Leah?
I would send it to Angus, right? Angus, right?
Yeah, you could send it to me, town manager, all one word, @wnewbury.org. But I have your information as well. I'll send you a note so you have my contact.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
So there's a motion on the floor.
Can I second that?
Further discussion? All in favor, Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
And Parker, aye. Jake, thank you.
And
So I
just a
think-
ditto,
Thank
just a,
both of you for stepping forward. That's.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
So Kim, we'll look forward to next meeting to voting you on to the as the associate for the ZBA.
So
All right,
Jake,
great. Thank you.
you're gonna have to contact Mike McCarron, the town clerk. I probably wouldn't do it tomorrow. He's gonna be a little bit busy tomorrow, but
You need to get sworn in.
later on in the week, contact him and he will swear you in.
Awesome. I will do. I'll look to do that later in the week.
Great.
On
I'm
behalf
not
of the
sure
planning
what-
board, thank you, guys. I appreciate your attention to the matter, and I'm glad to have Jake on board.
Great.
And also
you-
glad to have Kim in the ZBA if that works out, because we need all the talent we can get in all these boards in town.
Absolutely. This is great. Two new people. It's perfect. We need, that's what we need.
Good night, Ray.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, good night. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a good night, Kim.
Thanks,
Thank
Kim.
you.
Bye. Thanks,
You
Jake.
too. Bye-bye.
Hey, Archie, if, before we get to item B, I know we've got Wayne on the line and he has a 7:30 Concom meeting.
Okay,
And you may have seen in the packet, there was an item not reasonably anticipated at the time of the posting of the agenda, which is to do with the trade-in of a DPW vehicle for the purchase of a new vehicle. And so while we've still got Wayne, if the board sees fit, I would ask that you first vote to add that to the agenda as not reasonably anticipated, and then we can get into the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the Board of Selectmen's meeting from Monday, September 2nd by adding trying to get to it. Sorry.
disposal of surplus property.
Yep, disposable of town property. It needs to be, that's a motion?
You want a
I have
second?
it.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, I'll second that.
Further discussion, all in favor of adding this unanticipated item to the Board of Selectmen agenda? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Okay, Wayne?
I just wanted to get the okay from the Board of Selectmen to use the older dump truck that we're replacing as a trade-in. So we want to declare it as surplus, so we can put it in with the purchase price of the new dump truck we'll be purchasing in there. town us hopefully by April or May. So that would be a pleasant surprise for us.
Wayne, I guess my question is, you probably thought it through, but just to give us a little info. So do you think it's just equal value and less work to use it as a trade-in or to sell it independently?
I would say it's a very unique truck because it's a truck that actually has a Salter built inside of it. So it's not really a dump truck. So when you think of the dump truck, maybe I could sell it to a landscaper. It's not the case. It is the actual Salter part of the dump truck is built in the body itself. It's shaped like a Salter. So it's very unique. It doesn't help that it's rusting. The dealer did come out and take a look at it. He explained to me that he has 8 of them on his lot right now and nobody wants them. So he came with a cost, and then we did some research, and I went back to him and we negotiated up another $4,000 for the trade-in. So we got around $15,000. I went online to look to see what we had, and something close to that was running between $16,000 and $18,000. But that doesn't count if you put it to auction and pay any fees and go through that. So I thought 14.5 was pretty good. We offered the old plow blade with it. We offered a couple of things that went with the truck. He didn't want any of it because it's pretty much the truck is old and rusted, and so is the equipment. I think they rather not take it, but in our case, I don't think I want to have it around for 2.5 years, rusting away, even worse. So it'd be nice to get rid of it when time comes.
Okay.
Okay, I'd make a motion that we would use the Salter as a trade-in and get the value of $14,500 for it.
And I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
And Parker, aye.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good Wayne.
Thank you, Angus.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Second item on the agenda, discussion of availability of town meeting spaces for use by non-town groups and how it relates to our existing COVID protocols. So a little background, I guess there's been some requests for use of town facilities by outside groups, especially I believe a large facility like the annex, so that people could be more spread out, and certainly with coming colder weather, just bad weather in general, people are going to be making probably more requests for the town's large facilities. So having said that, there's certainly some indication, and if you listen to the governor's comments today, that instead of things going in the positive direction in terms of reopening things, things are probably going to be, well, they are going to be more stringent at least in the few of the forthcoming weeks. So having said that, I'll leave it open for discussion.
Yeah, so I was asked by somebody who's on the call currently, Nathan Kelly, about the possibility of using this was prompted by conversation I had with Nathan Kelly, and for use by a Cub Scout pack, group of it would be something like 6 children and 6 cubs and 6 adults, parents, and the thought was that they would be able to be in a large enough space, far enough apart from each other, and all appropriately masked, that it would be safe, or could be maintained as being reasonably safe. And I find this to be hard because I really want us to be able to start to use our town facilities, and, for residents to begin to be able to use our town facilities again. Anyway, I guess I'll just say I'm disheartened because things are headed in the wrong direction, from a health and safety standpoint right now. But Nathan, do you want to speak up?
Sure. Thanks, Rick. So Nathan Kelly, you guys know me from the Finance Committee and Capital Improvements Committee, but I'm also involved with Cub Scout Pack 26 here in West Newbury. I am this year the new Cub Master of the pack, and my den leaders have approached me about, things are going well so far. We have to do things a little bit differently this year. We're having lots of different outdoor meetings and things like that, but as the weather changes, people are anticipating, not being able to do certain things outside. And, obviously with the time change that just happened over the weekend, it's getting a lot dark. It's getting darker a lot earlier. So that becomes an issue as well for many people. When Rick and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like things were going to be okay. And I mean, I also work in a school, so we're able to manage things from a school perspective very well. Everyone's distance, stays apart, wears masks, and these kids do that themselves too. When they're going into school, they know the routines, they know what to do, and honestly, they're doing a really great job for kids that are ages 6 to 10 years old. It's really great to see what they're able to manage and do. The timing from the decision from the governor that's come out honestly couldn't be worse for the meeting that we're having here tonight. In fact, on top of that, as a result, the Spirit of Adventure Council, who's the council who oversees my pack, they run basically all of Eastern Massachusetts. They have this gear system, and they just had us step back from gear 4 that we were at back to gear 3, which now actually prohibits us from having any indoor meetings at all. So, things are going in the wrong direction from a couple different perspectives. But I guess what I would say is that I'd hope that the board would consider that if things do start to go back in the right direction, that we can more quickly have this occur where, if things go, if the governor lifts the current order and my council says, okay, we're back at gear 4, that we could get a green light to, have meetings of very small groups in very big spaces. And that's the idea, that very, very small groups can meet safely in very big spaces when distanced. And, we would be willing to help, clean things with, making sure that the area is left well tidied and disinfected with sanitary wipes and things like that after using it, and whatever we can to help out. I just want to see the kids have a good program this year, and being able to not only learn new things, but also maintain, social development to occur for these young folks.
Nathan, I know I totally agree with you. I've been there a long time ago with the Cub Scouts, so I know that it's hard to organize these meetings. I guess maybe with what the governor has said, your point is well taken. Maybe we can establish some guidelines for something that won't necessarily happen in the next couple of weeks, but maybe would happen maybe if things turn around, maybe who knows, in the next month or so. So maybe now that we're probably not going to do anything at the moment, but maybe if we can establish guidelines on how when things do get to a better position, we can do that, because that's one of the issues is we don't have the person power to have have someone there to make sure that a town facility is cleaned up afterwards, especially on an evening or a weekend, and what happens when it's might be used by a second group of people thereafter. So we have to rely on the conscientiousness of the people using the facility, and um, I'm sure you're correct, but sometimes we have had problems in that regard. Is that people have sort of uh, to be honest, left the place a mess, and sometimes that's not a big deal because it's just a mess. But now with the COVID, it's more than just a mess. Does it actually leave the town in a kind of liability situation? So that's our issues, and we understand exactly. I understand exactly what you're trying to do, and I hope we can. So let's see if we can establish some ground rules that we can use for the in the near future, hopefully.
Sure, thank you. And, I would point out that our organization does have liability insurance, that hopefully would be a precursor to any town insurance too, for anyone directly related to any events that we would be a part of.
Well, it doesn't really, because when you're dealing, this is Glenn, when you're dealing with stuff on town facilities, and we are covered for that, but we do have I think, and I could be Angus if I'm not correct, we have $100,000 deductible on that particular policy, anything related to COVID-19. Isn't that correct?
That's right. We do have communicable disease insurance, and as you said, it's got a very high deductible. Obviously, can someone establish, causality that they in fact contracted something through a town facility. That is a high hurdle, but there is some exposure there, and we need to be aware of that.
Sure.
Nathan.
And knowing a little bit about how insurance works myself, based on my experience as an attorney, I know that any insurance carrier is going to look for all the different possible insurances. So they'd also go after the BSA insurance for sure.
Yep. So Nathan, everything you said, as Rick and Archie have said, I agree with. But when we're making decisions like this,
No, Rick, excuse me, Glenn, I get it. It's just bad timing. I mean,
but yeah, we have to open it up to everybody. You know what I mean? Sure. I mean, you sound like you have, well thought out, but just hypothetically think of your Cubs being in there at 8 o'clock and then in the morning, just say on a Saturday, and then the Garden Club, because we had to do it to you, we have to open up to everybody's in there at 12, and then the Girl Scouts are in there at 4.
And what I would suggest to you is look at how the library has approached things from a perspective of handling books. When they hand a book, we borrow books, you turn them back in, they quarantine the books, and they basically say these books cannot be touched for so many days. And if you look at a site, maybe it's that that a site cannot be used for 2 days after someone else has used it, or whatever it needs to be. But I think reasonable, like once the governor allows things like this to occur again, I think that reasonable controls could be put in place to say, okay, we're not going to have multiple groups within a spot, and then we're gonna maybe even make it multiple days before someone else goes in again.
Is everybody in your Cub Scout group, is that all West Newbury kids?
It's a mix of West Newbury and Merrimack.
Anything in Merrimack that what are they up to?
I'm asking people that are that live in Merrimack to reach out to the people in Merrimack to see what facilities that are available to us. Traditionally, our pack is based out of West Newbury, but many years ago we merged with the pack that was in Merrimack. And so they came over to us, and so we're called Pack 26 West Newbury, and we've generally run all of our events out of West Newbury facilities. Mm-hmm. Typically the annex, occasionally we do things at the Old Town Hall, occasionally the Page School.
Mm-hmm. The Grange?
We've never done anything there since I've been involved.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that
I
does,
mean-
bring up an interesting, what Glenn started there, it brings up an interesting point, though, is that there's a limited resource, and of course, the longer the spacing, and Nathan, just so you understand, I'm just trying to think out in advance of when we might get to a point where we could do something. We have a limited resource where the resource is availability of spaces. And my guess, or I think everybody's expectation, is that there's going to be more demand than there is resource. And your point of spacing things in days, possibly, between events, between groups being able to use spaces to let them, I'll say, self-purify, is valid. But of course, the more we do that, the more it slims down the resource. If we can only use a space every 3 days, then the resource becomes even scarcer. So somehow we have to resolve that. We have to understand what groups are going to would like to use a resource, and then figure out if there's a way for them to do it. I know I went to sat in the health department or board of health meeting a week and a half ago, and just to talk with them about it a little bit and see what their thoughts were, and there's concern about cleaning. How, of course, if you give it enough time, the cleaning becomes irrelevant, because apparently the virus doesn't last for that long. It's not a persistent organism or set of RNA. There's question about how we monitor the cleaning. Can we monitor the cleaning? That looks like my video shut off. It's complicated to figure out how we're going to do this and how we're going to allocate the space.
Well, it would
Hi,
be,
this is Annie. When you have a minute, I'd just like to add something.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. I do the facility use. I get the calls at work. I work in the Selectmen's office, and it's not uncommon for me to get quite a few calls during the week. People don't want to meet in their home, so there's quite a few calls. So right now there's no use, but I'm just wondering what will happen when it opens up. How you limit all of this?
And Annie, are those groups?
What kind of, just, you don't have to be specific, but too specific, but what kind of calls are you getting from like?
Sure. I get homeowners associations. I get school pods. They want to do things with just a small group of kids, maybe 7 to 10. Activities that, some of the businesses in town that
Youth
they
leagues?
use the annex.
What about youth leagues?
Youth leagues, yep.
Yeah.
Music boosters, Pentucket, obviously the ones you've been talking about, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. There has been no Council on Aging, yoga, Zumba, line dancing yet, and none of those are really huge groups, but if it starts to open up, I'm sure they'd like to get back in there as well.
Thank you, Annie. That's
Okay.
good, valuable stuff, because you're on the front lines.
Yeah.
What I would say, we have a policy. I think this needs to be administered with Angus in concert with the Board of Health. And I guess they, with the Angus and the Board of Health, need to make that determination down the line of when things they think should be opened up, and then come back to us with their recommendations. So then we don't have to have, because I've had people ask me too, hey, Glenn, what can you, I said, you have to, call the town hall, call Angus. He's the person with, in concert with Paul Savigny, the ones organizing indoor and outdoor activities, by the way. So that's how I think we should leave this tonight, that, we have a policy in place and it's being administered with Angus and Paul in concert with the Board of Health. And until they feel that we can open these things up safely, they stay the way they are until they get back to us and it gets onto an agenda.
Yeah, and from what Annie's saying, we're getting, instead of, we're getting more requests than we do when things are normal. So that's going to make not picking, but determining who gets, who even would be able to use it. That's going to be difficult.
Yeah, there's an aspect that Annie brought up that I didn't even think of. There were a lot of groups that meet in their homes that just don't want that. They don't want, I wouldn't want anybody in my house because of my family that, that I don't know, properly traced of where they are and where they've been. So I can imagine people wanting to have meetings. Sure, they don't want them in the house. They want them at the town offices or a town facility, so they don't have to bring that into their own homes.
So I know I had referenced in the written materials that, I had back in the March, April timeframe, had done some work to put together a more kind of a comprehensive framework for the building, for the town offices on COVID-19. We never did get that over the finish line. Everything, we just, too much to do, too little time, and things ended up evolving on more of an ad hoc basis, which I think has actually worked pretty well. But I do think the time is right. And I met with Paul last week, and I think he and I are in agreement that it would be good at this point, as this does look like it's going to be with us for, unfortunately, for quite some time still, to put together some of these different things that have been voted at different times by different entities, both this board and the Board of Health in particular, and put that into more of under one, more consolidated kind of protocols for COVID-19 as relates to public buildings and facilities. So I think it would be time to dust off the draft that we did and put that into a form that we can bring to the board at a future meeting. Wouldn't be the next meeting because I'd want to have the Board of Health blessing before we brought it to this board. But I think, Archie, the point you made a couple of minutes ago of thinking that through with regard to facility use, even if it's not going to be something that happens imminently, but so that when the time comes, which we all hope will be sooner than later, that we have kind of clear protocols in place for that. And I know Paul will be happy to continue working with me on that. In fact, it wasn't him; it was really my office that we just kind of couldn't find the time with town meeting and budgets and all of that last spring, and well, and COVID. So that is something that's is coming back onto the kind of active work plan to put together some protocols.
Yeah, this isn't going to go. Yeah, well, one thing that blew my mind was that the Boston Marathon for April is already postponed. That kind of was a big eye opener to me that this isn't going away. And we see glimmers of hope, but then people just don't behave properly, and then we take 2 steps backwards. So I don't know what we can do right now on opening anything up and being able to monitor it the way that we need to.
Okay, Nathan, I'm sorry to give you unfortunate news, but this is what's happening.
Archie, while we do have Paul on, I don't want to, call him out, but Paul, if you did have anything to add, I know the board always appreciates your insight.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said about what's going on in the times of COVID, and as well as, I agree with both sides. I think we do need to try to get some facilities open, but given the route that COVID has been taking the last several weeks, and the governor's new orders that's going to be established this Friday, this is definitely not the time to make any drastic changes in the community. So far, we've been fairly lucky with a number of positive results. We've been in the red zone for two consecutive weeks. This week we're in the gray, but that doesn't mean we're in great shape because West Newbury population is such a size that we only go from gray to red. There's no green or yellow designations in between. So it could just be one person that makes a difference between gray and everyone thinks we're doing great to red that we're doing bad. So honestly, we're teetering on the edge of red right now. We're not even close to being gray. We're right on the edge of red. So I would say definitely this is not the time to make any drastic changes with opening up any facilities. But I would agree with Angus that if we did have some kind of plan in place or working document, keep on working towards it. That way, when it is time to pull the trigger, then we could pull it really quickly.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, guys.
On related related to that, we had mentioned at our last meeting, and this is before things had turned sort of in the wrong direction, about whether the town offices or the library, other town facilities, could become more accessible to the public. And so, with that note, Angus and I thought it would be good to see what how basically how the operation of the government is, how's the town government going? Are departments able to carry out their services for the members of the town community? And so we made up a little survey and to see how people thought, how staff thought the town was doing in terms of responding to the public's needs and carrying out their regular duties, and how they were doing it in the face of COVID, and how they were just how they were feeling in terms of their comfort level in carrying out their tasks. So I'm not going to go through all the numbers or anything, but we got a lot of response back in a very short amount of time. About 24 people sent their responses back, and the overwhelming majority of people, by far, were felt that they were their department or whatever was doing a good job in terms of their usual job, in terms of carrying out their tasks for the public. So in other words, the inspections department felt that they were, I'm just using that as an example, thought that they were able to do their job as well as could be expected. The overwhelming majority of people surveyed felt that they were doing their job even at 100% capacity. So out of 24 people, I'm trying to read my writing, 11 or 12 felt that they were literally at 100% capacity. So
actually, I think it was 17 according to what.
I'm not reading my writing. Yeah. You're correct. It's 17 out of 24 felt that they were doing their job at 100% capacity, which is really a good thing. I was curious whether people felt that they were getting any negative feedback from the public. Well, I wish I could do such and such, or you're really not getting back to me, or any of that. And again, the overwhelming majority of people felt that they either got positive response to the way that their facility or their department was responding to the public, or mostly positive. There were several people from the library. A lot of the surveys were anonymous, but a lot of people put their name on anyway, or they said where what department they work in, and so we got a lot of responses back from the library. And the only people that had any negative feedback in terms of how the town was doing were some people in the library. Said that some patrons of the library wished that they were unhappy that they couldn't browse in the stacks and but that was the only negative comments of any anyone related to, and even those people were mostly positive in terms of how the library was carrying out their job and the curbside pickup of books and stuff. Overwhelmingly positive in lots of other areas of the town that services that the people that responded. So again, very good in that response. In terms of were the staff comfortable in their position? Did they feel really uncomfortable working in the presence of in the pandemic? And again, people were overwhelmingly positive. 16, 17 people there were completely comfortable in their position. A few were somewhat, and a few others were mostly comfortable. So there was nobody that was really uncomfortable in their position. So that's great. Most of the people that responded to the survey, actually, except for one person, were work at their regular job site. So one person was completely working at home, and another person was working basically half-time at home and half-time at their town position. I don't know what that was. Sometimes I can say a lot of the surveys were anonymous. So again, people were doing their job. Most of them working not at home, but at their normal town position. In terms of what did people think about, and this, especially in light of the governor's recent comments today, probably a moot point, but most people were either felt that we should not change anything at the moment as the way things are going, or they would accommodate people coming to their office on an appointment only basis. Pretty much nobody was in favor of limited access or just returning things back to normal at the moment. So that was kind of interesting. Other things people.
Archie, where are you seeing all these results? I'm looking for everything on any email I got or in the packet. Were these sent out?
They weren't, Glenn. We had the surveys returned in paper, and Archie stopped by on Friday afternoon, and I knew I was not going to have time to synthesize it all into results, so he offered to do that. He put it into a spreadsheet over the weekend.
Okay, I'm just looking everywhere here.
Did you send it out to Rick and
I didn't circulate the spreadsheet, no, because
oh, okay.
no, I can send it around.
I thought you did. Okay.
No, just the survey itself.
And
Yeah, that's okay. We're getting the content now, so that works fine. You know.
The other comments I wanted to make were a lot of these are difficult to synthesize because everyone wrote quite a lot on the surveys, and it's not really accessible to numbers. A lot of comments, but everyone felt that their duties were being carried out very well. a few people wanted a few more physical barriers placed in their place of work, but actually not very many. There was one comment, which I thought was an excellent comment, is something maybe we could incorporate, was a suggestion to have thermometers available. So when people, if someone from the outside or even other employees are coming in, that they could be checked right when people come into the office. I know if anyone's gone into a medical facility, that's going to happen. You may be used to having that happen, or closed places. So that's something maybe that could be initiated. People have a sign-in sheet, take their temperature before they come in every single day.
Or they do it in the lobby. I test my employees' temperature every single day between shift and ask them a series of questions before they're allowed into the workspace.
Yeah, I do the same thing too. But I mean, here we don't have anyone, Glenn, that would be that person. It would have to be on the it would be up to the individual to do it.
Yep.
But a reasonable suggestion. And the final comment I make is that almost all the comments were positive. People are the staff were pretty much very happy that we wanted their input before trying to do anything, and also that they thought the town was addressing things well. The people were happy with the Board of Health's response, with how the DPW has put things in place. They were happy with the library trustees. They were, the Board of Health, I mentioned, and the selectmen, all different people were mentioned as the employees were overwhelmingly positive in their comments of how things are being addressed. So my take-home message was, especially in light of the governor's comments, is that we plan for things in the future, but at the moment, maybe we don't mess with anything. So I'll shut up.
Mine was, I don't know if I asked for this. Well, I asked this kind of to be on the agenda to have a conversation about it. And I think the survey, the way it sounds, was a success, and I'm glad that we did it. But my questions tonight were going to be twofold. That about opening, and I don't think we should, and not even discuss that. But another one is making sure that all our employees are being utilized now that we're not seeing foot traffic the way we do. We're not seeing any foot traffic, especially like the library. I understand that I wouldn't mind having a discussion with the Board of Library Trustees to maybe some job sharing, just to have a conversation. I'm not saying to do it or not doing it, but we are paying everybody. We haven't stopped paying everybody. We made that vote back in March, and I don't think any of us thought that this would last this long. As sure as heck I haven't. I didn't realize it. So we do have a lot of employees we're still paying, and just to use the library as an example, we don't have the foot traffic coming in. We don't have, but everybody's getting paid. I'm not sure what's going on over there. They're doing an excellent job, and I hear, I see the things outside and follow the stories, and people can get books if they order them, and they don't go into circulation for a period of time to make sure that they're clean for the next person. But I think in the day of decreasing revenues, I don't think it's going to be anybody surprised that our taxes are going to be increased. When we set the tax rate this year, and try to save as much as we possibly can. I don't know if we can or not, but I think we owe it to the residents and the taxpayers to at least have that conversation, and see if we can maybe do some job sharing. Yeah, I'm not as busy as I used to be, without the foot traffic, but I'm at 80%, but I'm doing my job. I mean, we have a basement full of periodicals and things that need to be filed and all that stuff in the basement that somebody could be doing, that we're going to have to pay somebody eventually to do. They would be sectioned off from anybody else. That's just an example. So that's it. I think we need the conversation, because I don't know, when somebody asks me the question, hey, what's going on with all these people we're paying? I don't have an answer for that. I'm not saying there is a bad answer. I just don't have an answer. And I wouldn't mind having a conversation now that it's gone on since March to November, that every single person has gotten paid. And like a business, I had to lay off some people and furlough some people because of attendance and because of people not being able to get into buildings and people working from home, that I had to do that. So I think we should at least do our due diligence and make sure, we just ask around and have these conversations, and we might come up with nothing, or we might come up with something. But at least I think we owe it to the citizens to have the conversation.
Glenn, how do we, we were, I hear what you're saying, and as the trustees of the library have a lot of jurisdiction, you might say, over the library and over the library's budget and running of the library. How would
Yeah, it's like the police department. We give, we approve a budget for the police department at our Springtown meeting, and then the police chief, with the Strong Chiefs Act, allocates that, and we really can't tell them how to spend it. And it was a good example of having that sign put out front. The selectmen really didn't even have the authority to say yes or no to that sign, because that's on the public safety buildings stuff. I understand they have that. So I think they would even appreciate a conversation. Maybe they're waiting for somebody to have a conversation. Maybe those are employees saying, yeah, I can, it's not like it used to be. And how many books need to be cleaned when they come back? Or they come back and say, you know what, we're fully utilized. All of our people, we can't spare 5 hours at town hall. And I just use the library for an example. We should talk to every single department. If every department says, yeah, I'm totally utilized. But the biggest problem we were told before COVID was, it's hard to get my work done, or there's not enough time in the day because there's so much foot traffic. With everyone, it's hard. They want to be, we've never had a complaint. All of our employees are very friendly to all the people who come in, and they spend time with them, and it gives them a good feeling, a good small town feeling. But now that that's gone, where is that time? Because that time was put into their job. It should be, public interaction was a big part of their job on a lot of people. Are they just getting all the extra work done that they couldn't get done before? Probably, but it's been since March. I don't know. I think the taxpayers deserve at least a conversation, don't they?
agreed? Yeah, it's just
It might not go anywhere, but at least there has to be a conversation. And I'm not picking on. I don't want people to think I'm picking on the library. I was just using an example. If you look at
definitely worth talking about, Glenn. There's no
yeah,
question.
just have a conversation. It might all stay the same, but
Glenn, you're muted now.
Angus, do you have any thoughts on how we could arrange this? That's all.
Well, I think it's, first of all, I agree with what Glenn's saying, that it's a conversation that's important to have. And as you know, we're not far away from kicking off the FY22 budget cycle. So whether it's something that plays out on a near term or a slightly longer term, we're not that far away, just a couple of months from when we're presenting the FY22 budget. And certainly these questions that are being raised tonight are just the exact same questions that I would be asking in preparing a budget, because no one knows what's going to happen in 3 to 6 months. Never mind 8 to 20 months, which is the next fiscal year. So I think the starting point ought to be. I think there's a couple of things in terms of the, town personnel. I think questions along the lines of level of utilization. I think would be very telling to, draw out from people how their jobs have changed. So for instance, in the, finance department, it's a little different, but, for all the time that I would be the first to say very clearly, we have saved a bunch of time in terms of the foot traffic, because it's exactly right. I mean, that took up quite a lot of unbudgeted time, and it's very hard to get your work done, with constant kind of ad hoc meetings. But at the same time, there's a lot of new responsibilities, many of them directly driven by COVID, whether that's, putting in place new, policies or, the CARES Act filing, the FEMA filings, the documentation, all of that. But I think asking people and asking department heads to self-evaluate what have been the time impacts on the positive side, meaning less impact on their time, and what have added to their work, because I think there's both. I mean, take health is another obvious example where, they're doing so much now that, 10 to 12 months ago was not even, part of the need. But there's other departments where I think it's been probably more of a net savings on responsibilities. And I think libraries, probably one of those. So I think on that, as you said, Archie, and the Library Board of Trustees does have, considerable amount of autonomy once that annual budget is approved. So I think what I think I heard Glenn suggest of inviting that board for a conversation would be a very constructive conversation as we look ahead to FY22 budgeting, at least.
Yeah, they do, but don't we set the salaries and stuff like that?
Yes.
So, okay.
So would we want to,
It's a lot on the table, Archie. Angus, could you everything got thrown out here. Any way you could summarize a way of going about this for us? Or do you want us to do it? I don't want to put more work on your plate.
Yeah, well, I've been, one thing I've been looking at again is you'll remember last spring, we talked about putting in place a telecommuting agreement with each employee. And we got that up to a certain point. We were almost pretty well there, but then we didn't actually get it over the finish line. And I think that is something I'd like to move forward with. And I think that could be modified a bit to add some, questions or to have some give and take with different department heads and employees, just to get, a better handle on how the pandemic has affected different departments, either on the plus or on the minus side, in terms of time and responsibilities. And I think, my goal is to get the FY22 budget package circulated before Thanksgiving. Ideally, it would be, more like mid-November. We'll see if I can put that all together. But in that, I typically, include questions that I'm asking for people to respond to, such as how their responsibilities may have been impacted by new mandates, those kinds of things. It would be crazy not to ask questions about COVID impact. So I think it could be, I think I can do some outreach to some staff. I think in terms of discussion with the library, certainly I could talk to Corinne. I will talk to Corinne about tonight's conversation. But I think the suggestion that I think I heard of, potentially the two boards talking, I think would be a constructive next step on that part of the organization.
And I think that should happen soon. I think that should happen sooner or later, because I think the library is just the biggest impact because they have the most employees, and their business, their thing is driven from people coming in. You know what I mean? And now they don't have that. They do have programs, and they are still giving out books, but it's not like it used to be. So we put together a budget that the library were going to have X amount of people coming in. It was so busy that we were going to have another person, and they actually said no to that, obviously, because of the situation. But that's just the obvious one. I mean, then you go to DPW, no, they have more stuff they're doing. And then the other departments, it could be just hours rather than days. Do you know what I mean by that? Or employees, because we're just so small staffed as it is. But maybe just, all we're hearing is that one department's busy, the other one's not, or this. Maybe we can just be able to manage it a little bit better. And maybe we could just do a little bit more job sharing because we're just not that busy in these departments because we don't have the foot traffic. Or maybe, I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think, I'm going to say it again, the taxpayers deserve the conversation.
Okay, let's see if we can,
But I would ask if we could get the library board of trustees to come in at the next meeting to start there at least. And if everybody doesn't think that's a good idea, then it isn't then. But sooner than later.
I see no reason not to. No, I agree.
Yep, no, we got to start the dialogue as soon as we can, which would be the next meeting.
Okay. You got it.
Okay. Our next item is just update on some anticipated site testing at the 28 Coffin Street proposed development site. Angus, you're more up to date on this. You give us a brief summary of this.
So the presumptive developer, the applicant for the site eligibility letter with Mass Housing, which by the way is still pending. We haven't heard anything further there. Recently contacted the water department to request permission to tie into an adjacent hydrant. There's some site testing that is being required by Mass DEP that has to be completed before an applicant can seek a wastewater discharge permit or groundwater discharge permit under the Mass DEP regulations. So I had asked Paul Savigny about it. He described it as kind of a glorified perk test. So kind of a perk test, but on a larger scale, in this case, a significantly larger scale. So this type of tie into a hydrant is something that Mike Goutet, the water superintendent, referred to as something kind of like a hydrant rental, where a developer can, pay a fee, pay for the water used through a meter, and basically tap into a hydrant under the oversight of the water department. So this request has been put in. It's pending before the Water Department, and the Board of Water Commissioners has a meeting this Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. To take up the request. Normally, I'm told that the board doesn't always act on these. Sometimes it's handled at the administrative level with the superintendent, but due to the scale of the request and the public interest in this site, it is being taken up by the board for the Board of Water Commissioners to make a recommendation to either allow this or not. So I wanted to share this with the Board of Selectmen as an informational item, as something that's the request is pending. And if this does go forward, this could take place or would be expected to probably begin later this month. So obviously, if that happens, it would generate some amount of interest. So trying to share the information before something actually happens out in the field, potentially.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
When you say the scale of the, you said something like that. Does that
Yep.
mean the amount of gallons they're going to be using is a big amount?
Yeah.
It is a big amount. Yes.
It was a rhetorical question. It's like 30,000. I knew that answer. I just wanted to make sure everybody else did.
100,000.
It's like 30,000 per day over 4 days. So, or 27.3. So it's
How much is that?
it's it's about 114,000 gallons. Is that about?
And like, what's that equivalent to? Like, it sounds like a lot to me, but then when somebody says, oh, that's what a household uses in a day, I don't know what. I mean, is that going to deplete our water? It won't deplete it, but is this just? I don't know what I'm trying to say. What rate can they use? Can they decide on a rate? Because I know we have a graduated rate.
I did reach out to see if the water superintendent had an estimate of what amount of cost this would, or what amount of revenue this could generate, or what would be the developer's cost. I don't have an answer for that, but I know that the Board of Water Commissioners will look at that, both of those questions.
So I guess the way they set the rates for a household is, it's at X amount of gallons until you use this amount, and then it's obviously a higher amount per gallon if you go, like a premium. So it tries to get people to conserve water, and you pay, a bigger amount per gallon if you go over a certain threshold. I'm not sure. Is it apples to apples? Is it apples to oranges? Can they decide the rate? Do we have to have water commissioners down there? We get to charge for their time? I don't know anything about it, but I would say we try to get as much money for the town as legally possible. And so it makes the town whole. I don't know. And
I sort of feel similarly there, that we should definitely, the water department's going to be providing a service, not just in the form of water, but in the form of making the water available. And they shouldn't be giving that away, giving that service away.
and if they're going to be using a hydrant,
demands.
I'm sorry about that, Rick. I'm sorry. I talked over you. I thought you were done. And if they're going to be using a hydrant, that means that hypothetically, if there's a fire in that area, I don't know if it's going to bring down the pressure or not, that I would talk to the fire chief and make sure that we need a detail or something down in that area of the world to make sure, we're able to respond and the tanker is full of water and all that kind of stuff going down there, because I don't know what that does to the pressure. Does the pressure come right back? All I know is I don't know. But
All good questions, Glenn. And I was just curious how much I think I could be totally wrong, but it seems in the back of my mind that the town uses maybe 50 million gallons a year that we pump from the well field, something in that neighborhood. Some reason that number sticks out. So you divide that by 365 and it's 137,000 gallons. So in other words, this
it's
would
a day's worth.
be like the equivalent of a day's
In February.
whole day's usage for the town. So it's certainly a significant, you know, for those days it's being done, it's certainly a significant amount. And I, you know, like you say, I wouldn't want it affecting the water pressure or in the case of a fire emergency or something like that. Yeah.
And is it going to turn everybody's water brown down in that area? Because like when they
Yeah,
do the,
yeah, exactly. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, there should be some responsibility on the part of the developer if in fact a draw like that for that period of time, you know, they do flush hydrants, but which changes the water color, you know, which adds typically rust or whatever is on, you know, contaminating the lining in the pipe. They do that on an annual basis, but if you're doing something for 4 days, you know, a heavy draw for 4 days, how does that impact the water clarity and what the water is carrying? And so if there's a downside, what if a bunch of neighbors have problems in their houses because of this? Is the developer going to make them whole?
All good questions.
yeah, but or all these things that you're supposed to do to provide a service to somebody who's going to be coming in here too. You know what I mean by that? I don't know that, but I wouldn't think so.
And say that again, Glenn. I don't.
But you know, he's going to build a house, so you know, just say hypothetically, somebody's going to build a house. There are a certain level of services that we have to provide. Does this fall under something? I don't know.
Well, I guess I can't only from what.
Have we ever done this before? Did we have we did we do this down at Ocean Meadow?
I don't think those developments were large enough that they required this kind of testing. It's, you know, it's
Okay.
a different, the system, you know, substantially
Yeah,
larger.
I know. I
than
just
those.
I didn't know what level, you know what I mean, what the threshold is. Okay. Well, I think without beating this thing with that, you know, whatever, I just want to make sure that we charge as much as we possibly can charge, that the town is made whole, and we're not giving this stuff away. Because people saw some really big water bills this time around, and there's still a bad taste in people's mouths. So I want to make sure that, you know, the fire department, all those things are answered. I don't know the answer to those things. How long does this take? Like, I know it's 4 days, but how long are they going to do it per day? How long does it take to get 100 and something?
Continuously, Glenn.
I think it's 24 hours, Glenn.
Just keep going.
You know, 24 hours.
Oh, okay. And I'm sorry. And then second of all, where's all that water going?
In the ground.
Yeah, but
4 days. Yeah, into the ground. That's what this is. This is like, as Angus and Paul said, it's a glorified.
oh, but it's such a big leaching field that it has to take this much water, a volume of water to make sure that it leaches properly. I got you.
Exactly.
But what if it doesn't? Is it going to run off into the neighborhood? I don't know. All I know is I don't know. But that's a lot of water to be putting
I
in some.
I wondered about that question too, Glenn, but I think it's where it's the low area.
Mhm.
So that where the water goes sort of
Mhm.
between that property and the Fieries property.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Is that what, if I recall correctly? So I wondered, like, what if it isn't working? Where's all this water gonna go?
Mhm. Well, I would assume, and I know that we shouldn't be assuming that the people going to be doing this isn't their first rodeo, but it sounds like it's our. I know this is my first. This has never been asked to me before, brought to my attention before, since I've been a selectman. I just want to make sure that every aspect of the town, is made whole.
Angus, one question: who oversees this? Is there someone from Mass DEP that comes out a week later, or is someone watching this while it's happening, or Is anybody around? What happens in that as far as that goes?
It's not something I'm particularly familiar with either. I did ask Mike Goutet the question of, overseeing the connection to the hydrant, and he said he does that, and he installs a meter on the hydrant and a backflow protector. But in terms of, witnessing the actual work or, I don't know. And again, I hate to call Paul out, and I don't know that this town has seen a whole lot of wastewater discharge or groundwater discharge permit applications. So I don't know if this is something that, Paul, if you have any insight on the question, this recent question of is DEP on site for some of this?
Yeah, I'm not sure if DEP is on site, but it will be done by the hydrogeologist that's doing the testing. And most of it has to, and he's already got some monitoring wells up in the location anyways, and this test is going to determine the groundwater mounting effect of the septic system. And any leaching system, there's always some groundwater mounting effect because you're putting so much water into the ground that the actual physical water table is raised due to the groundwater mounting effect. So this test, as part of this test, is determine the height of the groundwater mounting to make sure they have the proper separation between the bottom of the leaching facility and groundwater. And they also add in the groundwater mounting effect based on the soils and the amount of gallons per day flow going in there.
Do you monitor this, Paul? Are you out there also?
No, I am going to go out and check it out just because it is, a large project, and I've, heard about this and been on seminars and, read about it in school and whatnot. They did install some monitoring wells with, with electric probes in the ground so they can determine the actual groundwater mounting effect. The effect of this many gallons per day flow onto a certain square footage area, what effect that has on the actual groundwater table. And they have to include that calculation into their groundwater offset.
So is Chip going to allow you to monitor this?
I'm not going to be out there, I'm just going to go out to evaluate it and see how it's done. I don't have no really say as to whether it's right or wrong. That's up to DEP as to, because DEP oversees the entire project because it's over 10,000 gallons per day. And you had asked a question about the other projects. The other projects are just under 10,000 gallons per day design flow, and that is the threshold for between the local board of health and the DEP taking over the project.
Thank you, Paul.
It's like clarified perk test. Isn't that typically or frequently a sort of decision point on the part of a developer, Paul? As far as how large development is based on the number of bedrooms and the gallonage, and hence the size of the system and what they have to do.
Yes, typically the developer would try to keep it on the 10,000 gallons per day to stay with the local and avoid the cost of the groundwater discharge permit. But again, anything over 10,000 gallons a day to, I believe, 50,000 gallon a day is one particular threshold. And once you get up above 50,000 gallons per day flow, it's another whole set of criteria you got to make. So if you're going to make a system over 10,000 gallons per day, you got to make it big enough so it, the benefits outweighs the cost of putting the infrastructure in to treat it.
Okay, so obviously their permit is the thing that DEP would probably have somebody out. That's what pays for all this stuff, all the overseeing of DEP, the cost of the permit.
I would assume DEP will be involved because they're the ones that have to approve the project, or will subject to DEP approval. They're the ones reviewing the entire site for disposal of the septic, and then the ones who did the perk test a couple weeks ago, and they go to approve the septic design. And part of the septic design or groundwater discharge permit design is based on the groundwater mounting effect of the gallons per day over a certain square footage over a certain soil type.
And the perk test went well? Do we know?
Yeah, the perk test went well, from what the DEP did, but this is this is an
Yeah.
addition.
I understand. I
to
understand what
the
this is.
perk test.
Yeah, yeah, this is the same thing as like if you go in my backyard and you determine where the groundwater is, and I don't have enough flow that's going to really increase the groundwater, but because of the amount of discharge, this is actually going to raise the groundwater up, and you want to make sure the leaching field is so many, what is it, how many feet or whatever it is above that groundwater.
Correct.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so I wouldn't mind, when's the,
The water
Angus?
meeting,
Yeah,
water
thank you.
commission meeting is Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.
This Wednesday.
Yeah, this Wednesday, and it's the agenda is posted to the town website, which includes Zoom call-in info.
Okay. I'm gonna zoom in.
Glenn, some of those questions you asked just now, bring them up.
Oh, I'm gonna bring everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll type up notes from tonight's discussion and send them over to Mike and to the Board of Water Commissioners.
And if he's gonna be using a hydrant, could you ask the chief, the fire chief to comment?
Well, I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Hello?
Whoever this is not muted. It's a woman's voice?
Yes,
Yeah, I believe that's Rose. Is that
yes.
Rose?
It is
Mhm.
Rose. I have a question about this process that's going on now. Since our developer has a history of modifying plans, are the leaching fields still located where they were originally located on the first set of plans that he submitted? Anybody know the answer to that?
I don't.
Angus?
Paul?
We have a plan sheet that was submitted with to the Water Commission that I have not looked at it side by side with the plan set that was submitted in the spring.
So is he testing areas all around the property in order to find a new and better place for the leaching fields? And if that were to happen, then his whole design for where the layout of the homes would be changes. When do we get to know about that?
Well, I don't know if that assumption that he's going around trying to find a leaching field, I don't know. It's so for him to be, hold on for 1 second, for him to be able to test this water thing, that whatever this thing is called that he's going to be doing, there has to be an established leaching field. There has to be because that's the groundwater he has to test. So whatever perks that Paul talked about, that's where the potential leaching field is going to be, and that's why they're testing this.
No,
Okay.
I saw that the plan for this, it on the something that was in the packet. There's a trench dug right where the leaching field is where it was. Maybe it's 10 feet different or something or other, but it's right where it was we had seen last spring. Yeah.
Okay. And so I don't know whether you could answer this question or anybody could answer this question, but if the testing fails, does he get an opportunity to move that leaching field somewhere else on the property in order to continue his project? That's what my concern would be, that we're moving these structures and these leaching fields around the place to find the optimal site. And my concern would be not being notified about those kinds of changes, since my house and my property is going to be, it abuts all these plans.
I don't think we have the answer to that.
Right,
but
you don't. But I'm just expressing
but
what my concern is
yeah,
about this development going forward.
I honestly, see, it's so hard because when it's a 40B, it's the state, so they supersede all local stuff. So the only reason why Angus brought this up is because it's such a, high profile construction in town. So he wanted to make sure people were aware of it. Because
Sure.
generally we wouldn't even, the selectmen would not even be, if this was just something happening just hypothetically somewhere else on a lower scale, we wouldn't be even notified of this. The water department would just do their job and we wouldn't know, we wouldn't even be aware of it.
Well, that's what my concern is, not being made aware of it. And I'm just communicating to you that if any kind of substantial change takes place, I, as an abutter, would like to know what that change entails. And so I don't know what process you have in notifying people when these plans change, whether you're going to post it, make an announcement on the website, on your website, like you did with the 40B application, or what your process is going to be. Now, I know you haven't discussed it, and I don't expect an answer to that now, but I'm hoping that you will consider the fact that there are people who are concerned about the development and what the final plans will be for that development. So that's all I'm saying at this point. I know you can't give me any
I
answer.
think that's a fair, I think that's a fair request, more than a fair request, that if we get knowledge that he's going to be going forward with a plan that's substantially different than the one that everybody was, thinking it's going to be, that we want to make sure that everybody's aware of it. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but you're right, we haven't discussed it. So.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, Rose, that's great that you're thinking out in advance like that. And I'm sure we will share information. If we learn more information, we're absolutely going to share it with the abutters.
I do believe you will. I'm just thinking that you may not even know about it. But
But
anyway.
that's why this is on the agenda tonight, because Angus wanted to make sure that, this got the most visibility, so to speak, to have it on, just as this was just an informational thing just to talk to us about. So we are doing, so I think you should feel comfortable in that respect, that we are sharing this information. Because we don't have to vote on any of this stuff. This was just more informational in a discussion.
Exactly. I understand the implications of the whole project and what our limitations are as a town. And I appreciate your consideration of my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Have a good night.
One thing, Angus, could you, just before we move on from the Coffin Street, Angus, could you, have you heard any more about whether the Conservation Commission has made any progress in sort of defining a time when they're going to look at the wetlands delineations?
They are meeting tonight, and I believe that was one of the topics they were going to discuss. I met with the conservation agent last week, and the commission is looking to engage a third-party wetland scientist to review the delineations that the developer submitted. However, in order for them to set up the 53G peer review account that would fund the engagement of a consultant with the developers, developer would put the money up for the town to then manage to hire this consultant. They would have to open the hearing, because it's within the hearing that the scope and budget for that third-party review is determined. So I believe one of the items that Concom is talking about tonight is what might be a schedule for them to open that hearing on the ANRAD application that was filed last spring.
Why do they feel that they have to get an outside person? Our agent can't do that? I just don't know.
So typically, the commission would review all the delineations themselves, and I believe they've been hesitant to move forward with the hearing out of concerns about public health and safety concerns due to COVID. because normally the full commission would go out and walk the delineations that the developer made to either agree or disagree. It's very typical in other communities for a commission, rather than doing that themselves, to hire a third party wetland scientist to do that. So what the commission's looking at is really typical of how it's often handled in other communities, and including for something, there are some kind of potential liability issues if the commission's doing that themselves, as opposed to having someone who's certified to do that. And obviously we all want to get it right. So I think that's why they're looking at hiring a third party.
Angus, I explain again the time sequence of that, because you confused me. Does, in order for the developer to fund the account that can be drawn by the say by the Conservation Commission, does it have to be, does the project have to have been deemed eligible by mass housing or not?
No. It's totally unrelated to the mass housing process, because that, as you know, there hasn't been any movement there that we're aware of. Now, this is to do with the ANRAD. The abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. So that's the developer saying this is where we think the boundaries of the wetlands and the vernal pools and other protected resources are. And then the commission reviews that independently and either certifies those as the developer has proposed, or they may find differences. But at the end of the day, the commission, the Conservation Commission, certifies the resource area delineation. That then becomes the plan of record that all future design and engineering works around. So Mike McCarron and I had a call last week with John Whitten, the outside counsel at KP Law, and his advice was that the commission ought to open its hearing to formally establish that 53G account and to approve the scope of work for that third party wetland scientist to do. Mike, is that, are you, I see your name, was that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I mean, and part of the reason that they want the expert is because of the scale and scope of this particular project. You want to be able to, to have a, good delineation, because it covers such a wide area, and, where the commission themselves could, do a backyard search. I mean, you want to have all the aspects of impact on the wetlands for a site of this size and a project of this scale.
Okay. So maybe we'll hear something after tonight's meeting that you can tell us about next time, Angus. Our next item is just again, informational review of the agreement between the Pentucket District to offset eligible costs related to the CARES Act and the town.
So my office was contacted 2 Fridays ago by the superintendent with a request that we consider including some of the school's COVID-related expenses in the town's CARES Act filing, which the CARES Act, which is the Federal Coronavirus Relief Act, did include a couple of categories of expenses that were specific to schools, not to towns, and where we have obviously a regional school district, not a local school district. Those were not initially part of our filing, but we were at that time actively working toward the round 2 funding application, which was due this past Friday. And we knew we were going to have some additional capacity, meaning there was some additional funding set aside for West Newbury in the CARES Act that our local needs were not going to get us close to. So we told the superintendent we'd be happy to work with him, and to the extent that there were costs that were eligible and that fit within our allocation, that we'd be happy to include those. So we did a lot of work between my office and his office last week to pull the details of that together. And the nature of the expenses fell into three categories. One was kind of buildings, sanitizing and sanitation, which was these air filters or air purifiers with HEPA filters. That was one category of expenses. A second category was related to some technology investments that the school would like to make to improve remote learning. And the third was related to special ed, also in the area of improving remote learning. So we had a series of calls. Also Merrimack and Groveland were part of this as well. And all three towns agreed to include these expenses in the CARES Act filing. So we did. There are some complications, which one is that as the recipient of the grant funds, if we get these funds, it would be advisable to set up a sub-grantee agreement between the town and the school, because we need to be sure, at the end of the day, we're held accountable for how the funds are spent, all of the accounting, all of that, which, we could be audited for any of that. So it's very important that we would have a contractual agreement with Pentucket that would ensure they're complying with all of the program requirements. So I included in your packet a draft, kind of a template of a sub-grantee agreement that's in a form that had been approved by the State Office of Administration and Finance, specifically as relates to the CARES Act. So that's not something I'm requesting the board to vote tonight. That's something if we get the funding, I would bring back to a future meeting, because no cost would be incurred unless and until the funds are actually awarded. Which brings me to the second kind of area of complication. Some categories of funding in the CARES Act are assumed to be FEMA eligible. And if they're assumed to be FEMA eligible, CARES will only fund 25% of them, because they expect that, in fact, you're required, if you go after CARES, you're required to also file for FEMA for the balance, for the remaining 75%. So let's just say you have, air purifiers that are going to cost, $80,000. You could only put in for $20,000 for CARES. This is where it gets complicated. In order for it to be eligible under CARES, it has to be purchased and in use no later than December 30th of this year. So there's, while the CARES Act has been moving pretty quickly, there's no way FEMA turns things around that quickly. So we explained that to the district and the superintendent and said, even if we get the CARES Act funding for some of these categories of cost, it's only going to be for 25%. And we're not going to know if we're going to get FEMA funding for probably quite some time. And so how would you make the purchase and put things into use by December 30th if you don't know if you're going to have the full funding? So they understand that problem. And I think, they have said, and the superintendent's, verified that they understand they would be at risk in that scenario, that we might get the remaining 75% in the future. And in fact, we might likely get it, but we wouldn't know we would get it. And obviously we would need to make sure that the town wouldn't have any financial exposure in that situation, because we don't have an appropriation for these uses. So basically that's a lot of background, really just to kind of let you know what's been going on. We did put in our CARES Act filing last week, and not to jump around, but there's a summary of the numbers that we put in. It's on page 60 of your packet, your open session packet tonight. But you'll see, for instance, on the cleaning and disinfecting of public buildings, we had estimated a total of over $97,000 of eligible costs, but you can see that the coronavirus relief amount was just 24.4, so basically 25% of that amount. So that illustrates the problem I'm describing. We had shown a total of $257,000 of estimated expenses through December 30th, but of that, our reimbursement request was just 113,000 because of that 25% multiplier that is added to it, a lot of those expenses. So you've got a draft agreement in front of you. If you have any comments or questions on that, I see Mike's still on the line, and this went through his review as well before we sent it over to Pentucket. It's not ready for a vote, but it does. You see, it has some red line edits in there and some comments in there. And if you had other comments, you can let me know now. But if the CARES Act funding comes through, we would be bringing this back to the board to either approve or not. Hopefully to approve.
Why does this actually ever have to come back to us? Why can't we just give you I looked it over. I would only take your and Mike's recommendation. I really don't have anything to give to it. So why can't we just, give you guys the authority to do it now rather than wait to have?
Yeah, I think you could really. I think, we brought it down to where there were just a handful of blanks, which is just filling in the blanks on some of the numbers. And actually, we know those now. We did not know those at the time this part of the packet was put together on Thursday. We didn't get the final numbers until, Friday afternoon when we were kind of putting everything together for the grant submittal. But that's what you see highlighted is some of the numbers and some of the purposes. Those would be, specified in there. We are looking for, something in writing from the superintendent along the lines of that Athol sample letter you have in there, just so we have it all in succinct form. What we have right now is a bunch of email threads back and forth. But I do think it's pretty straightforward. We wanted to make it really clear that, one thing we put in there is that the district would agree to be responsible to provide documentation and support as necessary to complete reporting requirements for state and feds, including but not limited to FEMA. Just to acknowledge that just by virtue of including some of this stuff triggers the need for another FEMA filing, which is, more, hours for the town to do. And so we wanted to see if we're doing this for the school and, as you know, we're pretty lean on staffing. It's not a small thing to do an extra FEMA filing. So we want to do that. We want to help the school, but if we do have to do that, we'd like whatever support they can provide as well.
Angus, my only question is just the logistics of it. We're already in November. A big purchase has to go out to bid, and things have to be in use, in place and in use before December 30th. That seems when items like this are in short supply, I'm just thinking of the filters as an example, but they're also, that's a big dollar amount. Have they thought this through? Can this even be done?
All I can say is we raised all of those points, and I don't know if it can or if it can't. There did not seem to be a downside to the town to include the expenses, because the worst they can say is no.
Okay.
But even if the funds are awarded, this is why, I've told the superintendent, I wouldn't, even if I had the board's, authorization to sign an agreement like this, I wouldn't sign it until we actually knew we had the funds and that we were, and that we knew that they knew that, you know, we've put specific language in here to make sure that we are secured, because, you know, things like the purchasing that you mentioned, you know, we did ask that specific question just to make sure that all purchasing would follow procurement laws, and we were assured that of course it would. But we know, like, you know, it can take a lot of time on the calendar to go through that bidding. But there may be things, in fact, I'm sure there are things like, you know, pre-qualified vendors and some of these shortcuts that don't, you know, they save time, but you still know you're getting the best price because some other entity, like, you know, the Commonwealth, has pre-qualified vendors and certified pricing. So they may be able to, and, you know, Greg Lebrecht, obviously he's very good at what he does. So, you know, he and I spoke specifically about the issue of procurement, and he said he did feel that there was some potential, but they understand they're threading a needle on the calendar. I mean, it's already November. Last time the turnaround time was about a month on for round one of the CARES Act, but this is now round two. What we sense in our case, our request is a lot more in round two than it was in round one. It's about 12 times as much. We think a lot of other communities had a similar approach where they didn't have a lot of time to do round one, so the requests were maybe lower, and now they've had more time, so they're getting more in there. So I don't know that the state can turn it around as quickly as they did the last time, and even if they did, that still brings us to late November, roughly, before we know if we have the money. So it's a tricky, you know, it's a tricky issue, and the FEMA and the CARES really don't work together too well.
I would agree with Glenn. Is like, why complicate your time schedule if we you know, if things happen and you need to do them fast, you don't want to have to wait 2 weeks for a Board of Selectmen meeting in the future. I read the thing. I didn't have a problem with it.
And it sounds like you've taken all precautionary measures to make sure the town would be made whole and everything. And I have a question. When you say the FEMA stuff comes in a little bit later, so if it all has to be, so hypothetically, if a thing costs $1 and you have to have it installed by December, whatever, and the CARES Act gets turned around, so you get the 20 cents from them, but you have to have the seed money yourself for the other 80 cents before the FEMA people get things turned around, or does it, what happens there?
I think that you do. I think that you would need, that the school would need to have an appropriation or some amount of money to cover that expense on the contingency that the 75% never came through.
So the FEMA portion is not guaranteed?
Not only is the FEMA portion not guaranteed, but here's where it gets even trickier, Glenn, is the CARES formula all automatically deducts 75% off any expense in a certain category. And, you know, the expense with these air purifiers was this cleaning and sanitizing of, or cleaning and disinfecting of public buildings. And Stephanie and Jenny and I have all been on a number of CARES Act webinars and things going back to last spring and as recently as a couple of weeks ago. And CARES has been consistent that things like air purifiers are eligible for CARES, and they feel are going to be eligible for FEMA. But here's the kicker. FEMA is telling us and is telling other communities that these things are only eligible for FEMA if they're for first responders, and that they're not, in fact, going to reimburse if it's for, let's say, the town office. And they've been pushing back on some of our plexiglass costs and things like that because they're not for first responders. So, but we're still legally obligated under the CARES Act. We have to apply for that FEMA funding, even if we don't think we're going to get it. And only after FEMA rejects it can we then go back to CARES for what they're calling the reconciliation rounds, where you go back and say, okay, we only got 25 cents on the dollar. Then we applied for FEMA, they didn't fund it. Now you CARES need to give us the remaining 75 cents. The program administrators at CARES are telling us At the end of the rainbow, we will get their 75 cents on the dollar, but you can see that's a lot of paperwork and a lot of hoops. Right. I mean, this is, you can't make this stuff up, but
Oh my God.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, well, how much money are we talking about?
We're talking about really the difference between the 257,000 that we
Yep.
have projected and the 113 that we put in for CARES.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that's a pretty big amount.
Yeah.
And so we obviously need to make sure if Pentucket sticks its neck out and buys all these air filters on the hope of getting 100% reimbursement, but for whatever reason only gets 25% reimbursement, that there's no ambiguity that that balance is not the town's expense. And they understand that.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've dotted all the i's and crossed the t's. So, you know, whatever. If bringing it back bogs it down, I don't think you need to. If bringing it back is just a part of the process and doesn't bog it down, would make you feel better about it, then I have no problem with that either. But I'll do whatever you want us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to have the board's endorsement as to the form of the agreement. I do think that it makes sense to me to not sign it until we get the funding, because even though we all know that, you know, it says in here 3 different places that this is all contingent on receipt of the funding, I still think, I mean, even if I had the board's authorization, I think I would probably tell Justin, like, let's wait and see if we get the CARES money, and then we could sign it that day. But, you know, I don't know how I'd feel having a signed agreement out there only to find out that CARES is going to only fund part of our request. Because let's say they come back and only, you know, we put in for 113,200. Let's say they come back and say we're funding 94,000. It's going to take my staff and me some amount of time maybe to figure out what they funded, what they didn't. And I would want to be really specific with the district. These are the expenses that were funded. These were 100% funded. These were 25% funded. I just wouldn't want any, you know, everyone's under time pressure. There's a lot of complexity, and I wouldn't want any potential miscommunication where something gets purchased on the expectation that we're going to reimburse it only to find out there's some issue. So that's that. I'm just trying to be conservative.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of money at stake too.
There is. And the other thing, and I appreciate what you said, Glenn, about, you know, we have tried to dot the i's and all of that, but I would remind everybody that we just got this request a week ago Friday, and we submitted all this past Friday, which gives you some insight into why last week was so stressful. But yeah, we did try to dot the i's and cross the t's, and Mike McCarron went through it, and Stephanie and I went through it, and Jenny went through it, but it still all happened on a week's time. So I don't think we made any mistakes, but, you know, having a little more time to, you know, just make sure everyone's totally clear. And also the factor of 3 towns being involved, you know.
I got you. Yep, I got you. Okay. Sounds good.
So what do you think? So Angus, will we bog things down to send it back, or do you want us to vote now?
I think if the board's inclined, it sounds like you are, if you made a motion to approve the agreement as to form and to authorize the town manager to sign it upon confirmation of receipt of CARES funding, you know, in such amount as is supported by the CARES allocation, I think that would be great, because then if it's approved, then we can move quickly.
So moved with what
I'll
Angus
second.
just said.
I'll second.
For discussion, I'd rather do this now too, because I think you know, I don't know, my head's going to explode if I hear any more about CARES Act and this and that. We did.
Further discussion? No way. All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Great, thank you.
Angus, what's your deadlines for submitting this particular CARES Act?
This past Friday. It was.
Okay, so this is.
30th.
Okay, so I guess I'm confused on how, if this was submitted last Friday, how does how does this allocation for the school work into that?
So the funding that the school requested was in the filing that my office put together. The sub-grantee agreement is what would authorize the town to further allocate those funds to the school. So if
What we just voted on.
right. So if this,
Right. No, I understood, but
Yeah.
okay, I didn't realize that. All right, that's right. There are actually two separate sets of documents. One being the CARES Act documentation that was sent to the state, and the other being the sub-grantee. Okay,
you got it. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, our next item is rate setting for the electrical vehicle charging stations. I don't know, Rick or Angus, who wants to talk about that?
Rick?
Sure. I guess my thought is that what we should do would be to essentially cover our costs completely, the operational costs completely, plus some buffer, safety factor. And I think in the near term, at least, that part of what we're trying to do is encourage usage of the EV charging stations, and ultimately encourage, provide a service and encourage people to trend towards electric vehicles and, basically reduce their carbon footprint. So if you look at rates that are charged around here, it's not uncommon to see, say, to have numbers work out to say 70 or 80 cents a kilowatt hour, to charge. But if anybody's looking at the cost of charging, if they really evaluate their cost of charging, they're not going to charge at 70 or 80 cents a kilowatt hour if they can do it at home. So they're going to do it because they can do it at a fraction of that cost at home. So they will charge at home. Hopefully I stated that and it made sense. In any event, so my thought would be that we would take the town's cost of electricity plus the adder for the service charge that ChargePoint uses for processing for essentially handling the data. Effectively, that's what they're doing, is handling the data, and plus some safety factor, and call it at that in the near term. And that'll probably work out to be, I think, somewhere in the 30 to 35 cents per kilowatt hour range, which is not that much more than it would cost you to charge at home. If you charge at home in West Newbury, you'll probably pay, it'll net out at somewhere in the range of 22 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour. That may vary with the time of year. So, we don't know our costs exactly yet. We have to find out what rate class we'll be at and what the schedule is for that. But, my thought is that we would maybe grab a number like 35 cents a kilowatt hour, and that would be the rate that we charge starting out. We can change our rate at any time. We have control, or the town will have control over rate setting, and as I understand it, can be done at any time. Changes can be made at any time.
Rick, is it paid by chip card, or what? How? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So ChargePoint is, there are 3 or 4 companies that operate EV charging platforms in the country, and ChargePoint, I think, has the biggest footprint. Putting Tesla aside, which has their own system. And so with ChargePoint, they have a small card, like sort of a key fob, or at least what I've seen, what I have for myself is one of those key fob cards, that you would attach to your key fob. It's, and inch and a half long by 3/4 of an inch wide or something like that. And it's, you scan that when you go to a station, and it accesses your account and enables the charging station. And then it charges directly to your account, and ChargePoint will handle that charge and then will forward the town's proceeds directly, electronically to wherever the town is designated.
Monthly or daily?
Well, that's interesting. I sent an email to Angus, and I assumed that was monthly, but I have not set up an account because it's not something I should be doing. I forwarded everything to Angus, and Angus is now set up as the primary user, and you may pass on that responsibility to somebody else, whoever you deem appropriate, Angus. But the little bit that I did read, I trying to recall at what stage I saw this. I did go to ChargePoint's site using the access they provided me to sign up for an account, which, as I said, I did not sign up for. I then forwarded it to Angus. And I think at that point, they referenced transactions being, or transaction amounts being forwarded by the transaction, as in not monthly, but it may actually be instantaneously or near instantaneously.
Okay, Rick, let me ask you this. So it is ChargePoint say you have to be a ChargePoint, you have to have signed up with them? In other words, it's not like you go into a merchant and you can usually use a Visa or a MasterCard or an American Express or something like that. Or if you have ChargePoint, you only can use ChargePoint, and someone that has a vehicle with one of the other ones can't use it. Is that?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But as I said earlier, ChargePoint is
multiple. In other words, if it seems like it would behoove you if you were, traveling across the country or something, and you wanted to have more charge accessibility, that you would have more than one of these companies.
And people might do that. The thing is that I don't know what other companies, so this is what's called a level 2 charger. And I haven't seen any other level 2 chargers other than ChargePoint. There's a company, I think it's called Ego, something like that. I don't really pay much attention to it because it's a different type of charger. It charges at a higher capacity, and I don't know how many auto manufacturers use that particular interface, at least at this point in time. So
all I was thinking is, we're not limiting our customer base by using this. That's all.
I don't think so, Archie. I don't really think that there's another game. I think they are, for level 2, there may be another company, but they have a much smaller footprint, if there is.
Okay.
And as I said, there are a couple of standards. There's what's called fast charging, DC fast charging, but ChargePoint is, I don't believe in that particular space.
Okay.
So
They're going to be they're not going to be like Blu-ray and because
Yeah, all of a sudden they're gone.
Obsolete.
I don't think so.
Okay, so Archie, I'm not Archie. Rick, what do you said 33 to 35? Is that what you said? 33 or 35?
This is a little bit of a guess because I don't know yet what the cost of electricity is going to be for our particular account.
So why don't you decide now?
I was guessing in the 30 to 35 cent range. I would,
We can always change it, Glenn, but we have to come up with a number soon.
still well below what you'll find typically, particularly at commercial charging stations, if they're not owned by a municipality or some nonprofit.
So I make a motion that we charge 35 cents.
Second,
Per kilowatt hour.
And
Per kilowatt hour.
during the discussion, that's, we can change it if necessary, just so we can make the town whole and have a little cushion like Rick said.
Okay. That sounds great. Going forward, we need to figure out a mechanism for figuring out what the price ought to be once we have more information, because we most likely will want to change our price at some point. And is that going to require a Board of Selectmen action every time? Or should that be up to the finance department? We don't necessarily have to make that decision right now, but I think it's something we ought to think about.
but there's a lot of things to think about, like, we paid for the
Warranty.
the 5-year warranty and all that kind of stuff. But we have no track record. Let's run it for a year and see what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Archie. We have no history. We don't, and we have no history in a market that is expanding. So we really can't project what's going to happen.
No. So
Okay, we got to call the vote.
all in favor of Glenn's motion? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Who is the second?
Me.
Okay. All right, so yeah, we'll continue to, work with Rick on, and the Energy Advisory Committee on this. And if we get, new or better information that suggests that's not the right rate, we can bring it back, but we've got something to start with. So that's good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next item is a request to waive the 15-day notice and authorize the town to appoint an interim acting chief assessor. Can I have a motion on that?
Oh. Yep, we can. 1 second, please.
You got that, Glenn? Or you want me to handle that?
Okay, I just, you can do it. I just got it up. Okay,
Okay.
you can do it.
I would move that we appoint Maureen Curtin as the interim acting chief assessor.
At a rate supportable within the two,
Sounds good. At a rate supportable.
by the FY 21 budget, assessing salaries and wages retroactive to the date they assume these responsibilities, and to waive the 15-day period for this appointment to become effective.
You got it. I'll second that, Glenn.
Okay,
Further discussion?
I just want to, this is, as people may know, our former chief assessor, Meredith Stone, left about 5 or 6 weeks ago for a different job. Maureen has been filling her shoes as a practical matter since that time, has done a terrific job through a busy time of year with the tax rate recap coming up and some other things. So, really want to commend Maureen for the work she's been doing, and I have a lot of confidence in her, during this interim period.
Hearing none, all in favor, Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Thank you.
Next item is hiring of the Community Preservation Committee Administrative Assistant, and the same to waive the 15-day notice on her is her hiring.
So
Uh,
moved.
Second.
Angus, you want to give a little background and then we'll vote on that?
Yeah, we've extended the offer to Barbara Gard. She lives in Amesbury. She's formerly on the Conservation Commission there and had also served on the Open Space Committee down in Norwell, Mass for a number of years. She's got a master's in environmental policy from Tufts University, really tremendous experience working with conservation restrictions, working with historic preservation restrictions, and has a good knowledge of base knowledge of affordable housing as well. So I held interviews last week, attended by 3 members of the Community Preservation Committee. We had some really top-notch candidates and some good choices. Really couldn't go wrong, but Barbara stood out, and so I'm very pleased to welcome her on board. She brings a lot of deep knowledge of some issues, and I think can be really helpful to the town.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker.
Thank you.
Change in the job description and wage classification for a change as the water laborer,
Training.
operator in the operator in training position. So this was a request to change this position because we've been having a hard time finding an individual. So with enough training that wants to come to the town, but also do the multifaceted tasks that a small water department needs. So we've decided to hire someone with less training and get them trained while being doing the duties for the water department. So what do we need to do on this, Angus?
So anything to do with wages, I put before the board for approval under your authority under the statute. So the former licensed operator is what the position had been advertised as, licensed operator, and that had a prerequisite of the water treatment and distribution licenses. So the approach we're taking now, after posting that a couple of times and not getting a lot of response, is to, like you said, post it as a laborer / water operator in training. And really, from a wage standpoint, the main thing before the board, the licensed operator wage had been at the grade 6 level. Our idea here is to hire this position at the grade 5 level, but then to put it in that once they receive their licenses, it would go to a grade 6. So, we didn't want to advertise that without, making sure the Board of Selectmen were supportive of that, so that when the time comes, we can make that change.
Okay.
Does that need to be a motion or just like a roll call that we approve that?
It's funny because the wage schedule for this fiscal year already had the compensation at a grade 6 level. So, in a way, it's kind of a housekeeping thing. So if there's no objection, I think we could just move forward.
No, Jeff.
We're not raising anything, we're actually lowering it, so it's okay, yeah.
Lowering
That's
it
right,
for
yeah.
a time until the person gets that classification.
Yeah.
I have no objection.
Yeah, technically it's a new position, new job description, but it's all, it's a small department with 2 positions. So it's somewhat semantic.
And within existing budgeted funds.
Yes.
Okay, all good.
Good. Next item's meeting minutes. We had the minutes of September 28th.
I would move that we accept the minutes of September 28th as written.
Second. All in favor, Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Okay, we have a few updates. I know it's late. We've all been at this for quite a while, so I'll keep these succinct. And if you have questions, you can ask. But so the CARES Act, I think I covered the October 30th filing sufficiently earlier. We do have a report due in about 2 weeks, which is just a report of the actual expenditures through, I believe, September 30th. So that's what that's about. Because when you file, you're estimating, and then you circle back and report on the actual. Item L, the FY20 audit, not last week, but the week before, or was it last? Actually, it was, 2 weeks ago. The auditors were set up here all week. Just like every year, they go through all our books, ask for a lot of backup documentation. They even do a walkthrough to kind of almost like a pop quiz, if you will, where they look at different of your processes and have you walk them through it without you knowing what they're going to ask about. And I think it went well. We'll find out when we see the management letter, because that's when you really find out. But it seemed to go well. We had a good dynamic with the auditors, and at least as far as town staff could tell, we were able to provide everything they were looking for. Last year, you'll recall, the audit came at a really tumultuous time. This year it went much more smoothly. So we have gone ahead and scheduled for December 14th the presentation of the audit. That will include the FY19 audit and management letter, which was never actually presented. It was scheduled last spring, and then with COVID, it kind of just never happened. So we'll formally close out FY19 at that time, as well as presenting the auditor will be in attendance to present the FY20 financials. So that's that. The next item, the fraudulent unemployment claims. This is something that's really affected many, many communities in the Commonwealth. There's been a lot of press coverage in the print and television media as these scammers or bad actors have taken data that, to the best of our knowledge, and Department of Unemployment Assistance, to the best of anyone's knowledge, this is data that was gained by one or more of these hacks of these large credit monitoring agencies or something like that, where people got personal information for a large number of people in the country and are now putting that to use, in this case through filing claims in their name with the Department of Unemployment, which we then, as the employer, either current employer or anyone who's employed someone within the prior year, we get notice of that claim. So I've been keeping the board, pretty well apprised of this, but we've had, initially we had about 70 claims come in, of which about 14 were actually current employees, none of whom had actually filed for unemployment, so they were all bogus. And since that time, unfortunately, every week or so, we get more filings, not 70 more. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 more, sometimes it's 10 or 12 more, but it's pretty much a rolling, it's a continuing problem. So we've been following the advice of the Department of Unemployment Assistance, which up until last week they had set up a fraud email account that should notify that email account. The following is a list of people who are presently employed with the town, and we believe these to be fraudulent. And then you'd list those people, and then you'd list the people who you had no known connection with the town, people no one had ever heard of and didn't appear in our payroll database. Occasionally within all of that, there was actually 1 or 2 that was actually a legitimate unemployment claim. So there's some amount of time taken to sort that out. Also, if we got notice of a current employee who had appeared to file a claim, we would also notify that employee that we believed that a fraudulent claim was made in their name and advise them to take steps necessary to secure their own identity through filing reports with the credit monitoring agencies and perhaps putting a freeze on their own credit. So this has been a continuing issue. And then last week we got an updated advisory from the Department of Unemployment Assistance, which is telling us that now they're asking that we fill out every form that we're sent, because in addition to getting this notice by email, we also get it by mail. I showed a couple of the selectmen who were in last week, just one day of mail that came in last week, and it must have been 120 letters from the Department of Unemployment Assistance in a single day. I mean, it's really outrageous. So we're working, as Archie mentioned right at the beginning of the meeting, he's been in touch with Senator Tarr's office to make sure his office is aware of what a problem this is, as well as the impact it's having on this town office and town offices across the Commonwealth, because we really just don't have the personnel to fill out every one of these forms and send it back. So we're kind of figuring out what we're going to do about that, because it would have been enough of a headache to send them a list of people, but to follow, one at a time and to do all that paperwork we're just not. I honestly don't know how we're going to do that. So it's something we're working on, but it's definitely been a factor since this started about. I think it was probably early to mid-September, I think was about when this first started happening. And it's been a weekly time impact for sure during that time. The next item, hazard mitigation plan. There's a potential regional grant. I'll bring that back to you. If we decide to apply for that grant, I think it's due in January. Tough time to be starting a new plan update, but it is a required plan. It expires after 5 years, and you have to have it in place in order to be eligible for post-disaster assistance from FEMA in the event of another ice storm or snow emergency. I don't know how they're treating with COVID-19, if that's factoring in, but it's definitely a plan that we need to make sure stays current. And I think the most efficient way to go at it for sure would be to partner with other communities in the region, work with MVPC. So the idea is MVPC would apply for a grant to fund their work to update the regional plan that West Newbury is part of, that was done back in 2015. And like I said, it's not the timing that we would choose with everything else we've got going on, but I think this is something that we need to find a way to build into our work plan for the rest of the remainder of the fiscal year.
Angus, regarding that, the hazard mitigation plan. So I got some feedback today from somebody who had looked at that weren't able to be in this meeting tonight, but had looked at the agenda and saw that item, and just they were on the MVP committee, and they just wanted to point out that they had some concern about using MVPC for this particular plan because of just some errors in the data that MVPC has for us currently, say in the mapping for the town, and their somewhat would seem like unenthusiastic response at getting things right. So if we do this with MVPC, somehow we need to really get them to engage and take us seriously. We're not the biggest community that they work with, and but we need to make sure that that we're taken seriously as well.
All right. Well, I hope you'll make sure those concerns get over to me. I do know there was some questions that came up on some of the mapping, and
yep.
We do have a contract with MVPC that provides for them to update the maps once a year. So I don't know if this was to do with the assessing maps, but I do know that the contract we have for them provides for annual updates, and they don't do it on a rolling basis. But I'm not sure if the nature of the change, errors that you're referring to were covered by that contract or something separate. But but certainly, you know, if you send that my way, I can look into it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there is another option, but it would be more cumbersome. I mean, this, you know, using MVPC is clearly from a, you know, managing a project and an obligation standpoint, the easiest way to do it. But, you know, now that we are considered to be an MVP committee, we could apply for an MVP grant. And apparently, well, you know, based on the material you sent over, it sounded like, was it Andover, I think, and Georgetown both did that. They used MVP grant funds. But again, I understand, you know, we all understand that gets more complicated than doing it as a regional project through MVPC, and they kind of take it on turnkey. And we don't have to apply for a separate grant and manage a separate grant, which I know is, you know, for you has become, for your department, has become pretty burdensome. So it's just a thought.
Yeah, something to think about. It's, you know, yeah, I'll save my commentary because of the lateness of the hour, but it's distressing to me that a lot of times these hazard mitigation plans have kind of become an afterthought, and they are done kind of on a pro forma basis. That is the reality.
Right. Yeah, but the concern becomes if in fact there was an event and we needed to apply for you know, FEMA or MEMA funds, and if there are inaccuracies in, say, in mapping, and you know, we go to FEMA referencing something that's shown inaccurately on a map, how would that impact our ability to apply for you know, FEMA funds? I mean, hopefully we never have to do that, but we have done that in the last couple of years, correct? Applied.
Yeah, in the last, I think we put in for FEMA about a month ago for COVID.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, in 2018, we had a couple of FEMA filings.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'd want to know more about those inaccuracies. I think I may know a little bit about what you're saying, but I want to, if it's what I think it is, I think it might just be a matter of, you know, it fell under a certain contract and maybe not under another contract, but you can tell me more about that.
Okay, well, yeah, well, okay, that's something we can talk about at another time, you know, just one-on-one.
Item O, I had started to put together a summary. I didn't get as far as I'd hoped, so I don't really have that to present. So I'd like to put that on a future agenda. I think it would be good for the board to have a summary, and I started putting together a table, but I got to do some work to make sure I have all the financial information and so forth. But I can tell you in summary form, there's over 20 grants that are currently, you know, under active management. And some of those are, you know, very low, you know, administrative burden. Some of those are very high administrative burden with quarterly reports and, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm trying to put that together into a, you know, concise format, just so you have a good understanding of what we're already doing from grant management, as well as, you know, things that we've applied for and not received. I know you had in the packet about the assistance for firefighters grants that we put in last year. We just learned last week we did not get that grant, but that's you know, just the ones that are active is over 20. So there's some other very good looking grants out there, but before we take on new commitments, we need to make sure we have the resources.
Don't look at them, Angus. Just don't look at them.
I try.
If you read it, then you'll be enticed.
what's next? Future agenda stuff?
Yep.
I think it's the, I wouldn't mind having a discussion. We're generally the most, with the appointing authority and reminding the boards and commission. I asked for some minutes for a board that we appoint, and I got back from Mike. The latest minutes were June of 2018. And then Mike said he had some other ones, but I looked today, and they weren't on my desk, and I wasn't gonna ask Mike for them because he's been busy. But maybe we need to put on some type of discussion, a brief discussion about, and then about people keeping up with their minutes. And we generally do this periodically. This isn't the first time we've done this. We keep on doing it maybe every 3 or 4 or 5 years, just to remind people that it's imperative that they put up with the minutes and that they file them with the town clerk's office. So if we could put that on a future agenda, that would be good for me, please.
In terms of the couple of items I have on my list for the next couple of meetings, we're working toward the tax classification hearing with the Board of Assessors. They'll meet this Wednesday, and I met with staff earlier today. That could be as early as 2 weeks from tonight, the 16th. If not, it would be the following meeting, Monday the 30th, but that's coming up. We did get on a separate.
What's the drop dead date on that, Angus?
I don't know, but it's not November 30th. There's some breathing room, but
Okay.
We'll be ready. It's really a matter of when, when the DOR certifies the values.
Okay, thank you.
Separate issue, we had a resident contact us today regarding truck traffic on River Road. And as I think the board knows, there's, that's all restricted by DOT of what you can and can't legally restrict, but you can consider some advisory signage. So I circulated that to the police chief and the DPW director, and town council, and got some good comments back. So I'd like to put that on for discussion 2 weeks from tonight, just to share what we know.
Can I make a comment about that?
Sure, of course.
This might be, I don't know what they're talking about I don't know what they're making reference to about truck traffic, dump trucks or 18-wheelers or whatever. But if it's dump trucks, there has been an increase of dump trucks coming through West Newbury. And some people have been complaining about it through the side streets. I think that might have this is new, and I've seen some stuff on social media. I think this might have a direct correlation with the high school, because it seems that this has popped up since the high school got underway. So it might be advantageous for us. I think we have a meeting next week, right? The 14th, Angus, a building meeting?
We do, yeah. We have a school building meeting next week, yes.
Yeah. So maybe we might want to mention it to them and say, hey, listen, you wouldn't, I could reach out to Brad or somebody and say, hey, you might want to mention to your guys just to use main roads. Try not to use these secondary roads through town, because maybe they're getting off in Byfield and they're coming through over the bumpy road and coming up Maple Street. They're coming up, it's just a bunch of different weird streets that I've never heard of before. And it seems to have been popped up since the high school's been starting to get built. So maybe that's the case. Maybe we could just ask them if they can reach out to their contractors and, 95 to 113 and not try to go through all these other side streets.
Are they moving any dirt around there at the moment or no?
I think they're always I think they're always moving dirt or something down there. You see a lot of trucks going down there. I don't know. I might be off. I don't know, but it just seems to have having some more complaints about trucks on, the side roads.
Glenn, it doesn't, if they were on River Road, there'd be no reason for them to be, I mean, there'd be no reason for them to be on River Road and going.
I got you, but you don't know what these MapQuest things do. Maybe there was I don't know. You're right. Absolutely not.
Do we even know that it's dump trucks as opposed to something else? I mean, could it have been, I know there was
FedEx.
work, there was work being done, at the Coffin Street property. Could it have been the drilling truck going through?
Yeah.
Or, service vehicles for the drilling that they were doing up there? Is
It
that
could be,
possible?
or it could be those FedEx trucks. We don't know. Obviously they're everywhere. And I don't know what the definition when they say truck. So that's why I said I don't know. I said it could be a dump truck, it could be an 18-wheeler, it could be whatever. But if it's a dump truck, it just seems that people were complaining about dump trucks all of a sudden. And they were very specific about dump trucks around a month ago, 2 months ago, that all of a sudden an increase in dump trucks in West Newbury, and it was going down side roads. But you're right about River Road. I don't know. I don't know what their definition of trucks were on River Road. I have no clue.
But they weren't Matchbox.
I don't think so.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good meeting.
Aye.